Arganissima, New York. Your exotic skin, hair, and beauty source, and your one-stop shop for all your natural and organic skin and hair care, featuring authentic organic Moroccan oil and prickly pear seed oil and much more. Bringing you only the best, straight from the source and proudly produced in the USA. So what are you waiting for? Shop today at www.arganissima.com. Arganissima, New York. Your beauty is our duty. Arganissima, New York.
Well, welcome back to the iHealth channel, iHealth Radio, Hurricane H here. New show, new day, new guest, new topic of the hour, with a guest literally from the other side of the Atlantic Ocean, straight up from Marrakesh, Morocco. I have with me Dr. Hafsa Benzzi, and she is a dermatologist, MD dermatologist in Morocco, but she's also a student in Mount Sinai in New York, studying. She's doing a PhD for her, I think it's vaccine development and research. So it's a perfect topic. As I mentioned, we're talking about COVID. You know, that's been the discussion for the last year and a half, almost now going 2 years. But really, a lot of questions about COVID, about the vaccines, anti-vaccinations, pro-vaccination. What is the vaccination? What is the vaccine? What is made of? All these questions. We might have some insights as to how it all works and what's the development stages and things like that, because a lot of people question how quickly this whole thing, happened. And, typically a vaccine takes years of testing. And apparently, the COVID-19 vaccines, all of them, Pfizer, Moderna, all these, kind of got together in a very little time. So that's and coming from a doctor's perspective, I think it will be an interesting show because, not only just a doctor, but also someone who's doing the research, discussion, and all the stuff and seeing it, in progression. So first things first. Dr. Hafsa, how you doing?
Great, thank you, Hisham. How are you?
I'm doing great, and welcome to the show. And I just, when we first talked, you were in New York, so now you're in the other side, But you gotta love technology, right? I mean, we do this, overseas.
Yes.
I mean, this is like 4 continents. I think I'm gonna do the 5th one on Saturday, so I'm actually going all over the world. So thank you for accepting the invitation, and also for just being here to share with us a little bit about your story, your journey, your background, and also the research and the studies that you're doing currently in the environment that we live in. So first things first, doctor, tell us a little bit about your background. I mean, so you are a dermatologist in Morocco. That's been your trade. That's been your practice. And so tell us your journey, how long you've been practicing, and let's talk about your dermatology practice there. And then we can talk about your transition. Maybe we can talk about the comparison between the medical system in Morocco. I mean, a lot of people, Morocco is not a so advanced country, if you want to call it that. So there might be questions about how the medicine is practiced there. Let's shed a light a little bit on that. And then we can take it here, into the US and the education system here in the medical, field, the research and all that. So I think we have a lot of stuff to discuss today, and I'm all excited about it. So tell us a little bit about your journey in the medicine world.
Oh, okay. So I am Hafsa Benzzi, obviously. So I am a dermatologist trained in Morocco. Actually, I graduated from high school in 2001, and then I joined medical school because in Morocco, it's exactly right after high school, and depending on the grades, we join medical school. Then I spent 7 years of general medicine. This is what everyone does before choosing a specialty. So in this 7 years of general medicine, I spent 2 years of internship. So I did an internship in the emergency room. Then after that, because I had to go with the internship, so I can choose dermatology because it's really highly competitive specialty all over the world. This is what I discovered when I came to the United States. Then I did my 4 years of residency in Morocco, in Rabat. And after that, I worked with the government for almost 5 years. And then during these 5 years, I came here at Mount Sinai to do fellowship at the dermatology department. And I came across the clinical trials unit. They were doing research on psoriasis and eczema. And I have seen that many of the drugs that the world have been using for these two diseases got the approval by the FDA because of the clinical trials that were conducted at Mount Sinai. And I was very impressed because of the process of getting a drug approved, from working on it in a lab of basic science, then doing experiments on little animals, then after that on humans, clinical trials. So when I came back to Morocco, I then moved to the private sector so I can be free. And then I applied for this PhD and I got accepted. And I came here. I started on September 2019, just 1 year before.
Before the craziness, right?
Yeah, before the craziness. Yes.
Wow. Well, that's a pretty intense journey. And so a couple of things. I mean, first of all, I love medicine and biology personally. I mean, when I was in Morocco, my high school, I mean, the baccalaureate was actually biology, science experimental science, and exact same. And then actually, believe it or not, I was registered in the military medicine academy. You know, I was, but I never went through it. You know, I'm the only child, so my parents were actually, my dad was for it, my mom was not, so I never made it there. So I took off, you know, and I went from medicine potentially to tourism.
Wow.
So that's like a whole different, you know, leap. But then I wound up in the US, and then the next step I became, you know, more involved in the insurance and healthcare. And, you know, 27 years later,
back to healthcare.
I've been back to healthcare, working with doctors, but I've always been, you know, intrigued by medicine and everything, you know, that comes with it, in biology and science. So those, and again, thus, I mean, the health channel and the health radio, yeah. Right? So the reason I said that is because a lot of the audience, and, you know, obviously we have an international audience, and from the US and overseas, but so Morocco is a French education system. And I think that's one of the way it works. You finish high school and then you automatically go to med school. I think some parts in the US too, you can do that. And, you know, I think you have to do biology first before you go into for your degree in biology, and then you go to med school. So basically, it just starts immediately off the bat, you know, from high school in Morocco. I think that's the same thing in France, anyways. And so the concept here is that we just want to bring this story to the audience, because it's different. But I think the journey is the same. You still have to go to basic medical, you know, school. Then you have to do your specialty, and then you have to do your internship, residency. And you mentioned something specific, that you had to work with the government, and that's something that is also unique over there. Obviously, when you go to a medicine school, and these are very specialized schools, very few people really get to it, to them. I mean, positions or actually how many students get accepted in those schools of specialty in Morocco are very limited. And when you get in, you obviously, it's all prepaid. And so they pay for you, and then you have to pay back. And that's why you have to work for the government. So I just wanted to clarify that, because unlike in the US, you know, everything here you have to pay for pretty much. And unless you have some sort of a scholarship, you know, especially med school is very expensive. And so it's kind of like a little different. The education may be a little different. Now, doctor, your whole system, obviously, in the base was in French, right? So the whole education system was in French. Was there any difficulty transiting when you came to the US and Mount Sinai, and now we have to transit into English?
First of all, actually, you pointed out two interesting ways of seeing medical school in Morocco. First of all, this idea of mandatory working with the government, or signing a contract with the government. I think I wasn't that lucky, because now they can have the choice to either sign a contract of 8 years with the government, or what we call in French bénévolat, which means they get like half the salary during the residency, but after that they are free. And there is another thing regarding like going from high school to medical school. This is what explains the 7 years that we have to spend at medical school. Here in the US, it's 4 years, because they add to it they call it the undergrad. So they have to go to college before going to medical school. Then after college, they have to take the exam that they call IMCAT. And it depends actually on their grades, and then what kind of of college, not the name of college, the ranking of college. I learned about this here in the United States. In Morocco, it's pretty much the same thing. It's the same system all over the country. But here in the United States, it depends. For example, if it's Mount Sinai with Icahn School of Medicine, or it's Albert Einstein in the Bronx, even if we are just at New York, I'm not even talking about other states. So here there is some differences between each state and each college, because most of them are private. So, but also I have to say that I was lucky to be born in Morocco, because I didn't have to pay anything for my education. And I even got paid when I was doing my internship and also when I was doing my residency. So
Yeah,
yeah,
it's funny you said that, because I say that to people, like, I got paid to go to school, and they look, like for a scholarship, and they look at me like, wow, you're lucky. I mean, it's just the way the system works over there.
yeah,
But again, let's be clear about something, because not all this, I mean, yes, you can go to any university probably at no cost, but the universities or the schools of specialties such as medicine, engineering, tourism, and some of these specific, schools, they're very limited in access, and
absolutely.
thousands of people apply, and only a couple of 100 or maybe in single digits actually get accepted year after year.
Yeah,
So that is actually one of the caveats, that when the school is free, it's
yeah,
there's always a caveat and a gimmick. There's something there, right? Nothing
yeah,
is for free typically, and obviously it's not for free, because while they give you the education, they also expect you to pay back by giving back. And that's really what I think, Doctor, you just mentioned, the option of either getting paid half, and certainly, you can be released to be actually working in private, or you have to really give your own contract of the 5 years. And you mentioned 8 years. That's a long time.
absolutely. This is
That is a long time that you have to commit. But I mean, at the end of the day, you said it. I mean, it costs you nothing to do that, and you still get paid when you're working for the government. Obviously, it's not at the same scale that you probably be paid if you were in a private practice. Again, but that's just from the economy of scales here. We're talking more about the economic aspect of medicine, and the function of medicine, and also like being a doctor. And you have to make a living. I mean, doctors also, they work, they do serve a purpose, and they help people and save life. But at the same time, that's the way to earn the living. So it does cost, a time, and a toll in your terms of your lifespan. Because I mean,
yes.
it's a pretty long
12
shot.
years after high
12 years of
school.
your life. That exactly. That's, it's
Yes.
not no picnic. And I think it's all over the world. I mean, that's about the same. I mean, even
Yes.
here, I mean, you get the
Yes.
first 4 years, and then you have 3 years, and you have your residency. And if you have the specials, the specialty is more. It's crazy. But again, the bottom line is, whether in Morocco, here, anywhere in the world, I mean, you study the same basics of and fundamentals of medicine, and ultimately you can specialize in different things. And there are exchanges and programs like the one you've the fellowship program that you had, which I think that was also an excellent opportunity to open up a whole new horizon
Yes.
for you. And thus, I mean, ultimately, you did go back, and now you're back into the PhD program for the research and development in the field of vaccines. Nonetheless, because that's actually the interesting part. And that was before COVID, so it's not like you planned this. I mean, you were in it,
Oh
and
my
then
God,
it happened.
And then I think I didn't answer your question about
Yeah.
English. As
Yes.
you
Oh, we
know,
get in there. Go ahead. I didn't forget.
okay. I think the audience doesn't know that in Morocco we are a cosmopolitan country. We have many cultures. People speak Spanish, speak French,
Yep.
speak Amazigh, which is an official language. It is a native Moroccan language. We speak classical Arabic. We speak Moroccan. So in our educational system, we have to study foreign languages, and English is our second foreign language. In some places, like in the north, it's Spanish. So during high school, like I think we start very soon
Yes.
studying English, and then there is the medical jargon it's almost the same, like the words are similar. And when we get into the internship or into the residency, we can see that most of the papers that are published and research, it's in English.
Oh, so even in Morocco, it is in English. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I mean, I did my thesis in English too, so I hear.
Yeah.
I know exactly how it works. But again, it's not common, because most people think that Morocco is a French colony, and by in principle, and certainly all our education is a French education base. But languages is definitely an asset that Morocco has, and in the education system, as you said, we pretty much by default you learn 3 languages by the time you get to high school,
Yeah.
and then you get to pick a 4th one if you want to later on.
Yeah.
but it does help in communication, education, and in your case, obviously med school. I mean, medicine is not I mean, it's a very strong language. It's a very strong, terminology that you have to learn. I mean, but you said it. I mean, it's French and English in terms of biology terms and science terms are
Yes.
very close. So it makes it a little easier in terms of the understanding of how the body works and the biology, anatomy, and all that stuff.
And if you remember the math classes, algebra is classical Arabic word. It's al-jabr. So even
Yep.
in mathematics, the zero is from Arabic. So
and we can talk about, what do you call it? Algorithm. I mean, not algorithm.
yes,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah, same thing. So I mean, it's it's an interesting discussion. We could have a whole show about just that, right? Because we could talk about some of the medicine roots and things like that, and some of the original research and some of the early pioneers of medicine were actually from with Arabic language and things like that. So
Averroes, Ibn Rushd, or Avicenna, Ibn Sina. Yeah,
yep, yeah. I mean, that we can have a whole discussion about the history of medicine,
another day.
and that would be an interesting show because a lot of people may not even know these things, right? Because they're exposed to what's new today, but they don't know the
Absolutely.
roots. I mean, I'm not generalizing. I mean, obviously there are people that know these things, but a lot of folks, they don't care. It's not something they've been told, and they don't really worry about it. But it's good to share some of these facts, and it's interesting, right? Now you picked dermatology, and you said the key word is that it was a very competitive, type of practice worldwide, and it's also an interesting practice. Now, what also you stated something about psoriasis,
Yes.
and I believe it or not, I mean, unfortunately, we just discovered my mom just happened to be diagnosed with it recently, and I know a friend of mine whose mom has been dealing with it, and I have a few friends that have been dealing with psoriasis, and maybe we can talk just briefly about what that is as a I guess as a disease, an illness, because a lot of people may not even know how it functions, how it works, and how the body does it. I mean, I didn't even realize when I was talking about my mom's doctor, and he said you need to see a rheumatologist, and I'm like, I thought that's a dermatology, but he said rheumatologist. So I'm like, okay, well, how does that work? So maybe you can give us clarity on that one. So is it really dermatology? Is it rheumatology? Is it both?
And more.
Both. And more. Well, there you go. So tell us more about it.
Yeah, actually, psoriasis is one of the diseases that got me change my mind and quit the clinical practice to research, because at some point when as doctors we are faced with chronic diseases, what we call auto-inflammatory diseases, problems with immunity, and it's chronic disease. We have remission, but we have relapses, and sometimes the options are limited. And what we have is just prescriptions, injections. So we want to do something new. We want to try to find what's the origin of the disease. Like now we are understanding more and more about the pathophysiology of psoriasis and eczema. This is why the treatments, what we call the biologics, they are targeted therapies. They target some proteins of the immune system, of the inflammatory reaction of the body that are all that overregulated. Like for normal people, let's say some kind of protein that we call interleukins, they stay at certain level, but in people that have psoriasis, they are genetically predisposed to have these proteins of inflammation that are highly regulated. And the trigger, now we have so many triggers. We talk about the environment, which includes some bacteria and other elements. We talk about stress as a trigger, but this helped us to at least narrow down the list of hypothesis and then the medications. Like before, for these chronic diseases, we used to use one thing: steroids. Steroids used to work for every chronic and inflammatory disease. Like if you don't know what it is, you
Steroids.
just steroids. But now what's good is that we understand more. We didn't put our finger on like one cause or etiology of psoriasis, but we are working toward it. At least the patients now, when they got diagnosed, they know that it's a problem in the immunity. There is a dysregulation. There is a protein in the immune system that's overly regulated, that's genetically predisposed. They have to avoid stress, some type of medications, and they take treatments that don't give them so many side effects. Like with psoriasis, we have the osteoporosis, we have diabetes, we have high blood pressure. But with these biologics, there are more and more, let's say, cleaner medications that don't cause side effects, especially for these patients who are prone to use them for years and years. I mean, sometimes during their whole life. So it's evolution, it's remission, relapse. What we do with the targeted therapies is just we try to make the remission longer and the relapse shorter. But this is a chronic disease.
So it keeps coming back, you know. So you
But
clear it.
Control it. We have to control it.
So in terms of just the description of psoriasis, so I mean, I heard there's different levels or different types. Is that an actual fact? Okay. So I mean, the way I seen it right now, it's more of it like, it looks like a skin rash or like a heavy duty skin, you know, lesions or just basically like like almost like a harder skin that develops on a particular spot on the skin. And then obviously it's crusty, it's not really, you know, attractive, and that's really the I guess the bad part about it. But the good news, as you said, there are treatments, or at least to kind of remove it, you know, and reduce the impact of it, or at least the look of it. And ultimately, to your point, if we can reduce the time between, you know, each case of it, you know, when it comes on, you know, it would be like far in between, like in terms of timing. But again, somebody with a weak immune system, let's say somebody with diabetes, will probably have a harder time to do, you know, for the body to actually work with it, right? So you'll have to do maybe a more rigorous type of treatment, right?
Yes,
yeah.
we have also some types of biologics. It depends on the medical story and the history of each patient. If this patient has high blood pressure, if this patient has diabetes, the age also. Yes. And then what's very important in psoriasis is if it's limited to the skin, or there is joint involvement, because this is an inflammatory reaction. The immune system is really highly activated, and it can show on the skin. We have patches, red crusty patches, and sometimes in the joints. So these people, they can't move correctly. They have pain everywhere sometimes. So we have to deal with this. So we work basically with rheumatologists.
That's the connection.
This is the connection. Sometimes, like, also they have patches on the scalp, but these are like what we say the most common forms, and people who are lucky, they get this type of presentation. But sometimes we can have like what we call erythrodermic psoriasis. People are red, like completely red. These people, they got hospitalized. We can't leave them outside of the hospital. There are forms where the nails are completely destroyed. We have other presentations where they have pustules all over the body. So we have some very serious cases of psoriasis, but these cases are less common than the other ones that we see, like joints and some patches on the skin. The treatment also depends on the body surface. Like if the surface, we have some percentages, 90%, 75%, 60%. It's also a way to monitor the treatment. We can say the patient was cleared at 75% of the body surface or 90%. This is a way also of monitoring the evolution. And for every chronic disease, either in dermatology, rheumatology, or other specialties, we also care about the quality of life, like how the patient is feeling, how the patient sees himself or herself with the disease. We try also to, if the patient needs like psychiatrist or some help of any kind, we can also provide it for these people, because it's a chronic, like they have to learn to live with it.
Yeah, well, but it is a very shocking, you know, reality actually when it begins, because for us, for example, it's out of the blue. It just happened. We didn't know what it was. Finally, after, you know, going to the doctor and stuff, we got the diagnosis, and then we know what it is. So we are at ease. At least, you know, that's the other thing. Like, you know, it's not lethal, at least not in that level. So that's good.
It's not contagious. It's not something. It's not a bacteria.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was a relief to know that, but it takes a little adjustment to accept it, to understand it, to deal with it, and even visually, it's kind of, it's a little, overwhelming for someone to see skin, in a particular format, and believe me, I had to deal with that in the last few months because it was just all new to us, and luckily things are getting better, but you're right. I mean, it was an interesting, transition for us. So obviously now we understand that, and thank you for giving us that little brief description and just introduction to the basics. And I mean, for your expertise and really tying in with what rheumatology does and so on and so forth. So I wanted to go back to the topic of the education system just before we go into your program today, the PhD and the research. So did you find any difference in terms of the education format, the curriculum, the program, the way, the whole structure of the education here versus education in Morocco? I mean, some people would ask that.
Yes. Actually, in Morocco, what I have noticed is that we are an excellent clinicians. Like, because we start our trainings early from the first year in medical school. Here, the trainings, they actually at the third and the fourth year. And when we start actually, starting from the third year in medical school, we start 2 months or 2 months and a half in every department. And we have some mandatory department according to the classes we are taking. Let's say, for example, we are in our fourth year. So pediatrics is a mandatory department where we have to spend 2 months and a half. And then we work at night, we do night shift, even as medical students. So we are exposed earlier and you see more patients than here in medical school because it's 4 years. Then when we got our degree in general medicine, like after 7 years, like we have a strong background or expertise in what we call general medicine. Like, even if I knew I was going to do dermatology, but I knew how to treat like the big asthma. I knew how to treat exactly and correctly and make prescriptions about let's say
so different types.
Some heart diseases, high blood pressure, diabetes. Like for here, for example, it's very focused on the specialty. Like they study some little thing about everything, but after at the 5th year when they want to start the residency, like they get focused on the residency. Like for example, when you are general doctor in Morocco, you can make prescription even for depression, for anxiety, for some cases of schizophrenia or bipolar disorder. Here they cannot, because they have to go and complete the residency in psychiatry. There is a second thing. For example, I will take as example my specialty, dermatology. So when we study dermatology, we have like 3 areas. We have what's the chronic inflammatory disease like psoriasis, eczema, and we have acne also. We have the aesthetic part of it, and we have the surgery, and we have oncology. And after 4 years, we have to gain an expertise in each of these areas. For example, in the United States, when they finish the residency, they are good at 1 or 2 things, but after that, they have to pay for fellowship to complete the other things. For example, in Morocco, surgical dermatology is a must. It's not a choice. It's mandatory. When you get your diploma at the end, you have to be able to remove melanoma and do a very good reconstruction, like sutures that are aesthetically very correct. And we don't have, we only send like cases that need like general anesthesia or more reconstruction, or for example, we have to remove huge melanoma. But here in the United States, I see like they will have to send the patient, they will do the biopsy, then the dermatologist will not get the patient back. He will have to send it to the plastic surgeon to take the whole area of the cancer, let's say the skin cancer, then do the reconstruction. So here, let's say it's everyone does something from the specialty, and it's always a team. Like in Morocco, the concept or the mindset is that the patient has to get everything done by the least number of people, or doctors.
Doctors, yeah.
Here in the United States, sorry, no, it's okay. Like he can see the dermatologist and the plastic surgeon, then he can go see the oncologist. Then
Well, it is an industry, and ultimately there's a referral base, and
yes,
specialties, subspecialties. So what I think the main difference here in terms of just what I'm getting, and for the audience, is that in the education system there, as a doctor, you practice pretty much a general concept, but also subspecialties in the same concept. So you're kind of like a jack of all trades, while you're there. And then you can also add a specialty and really expand on that. Here, you get your basics, and then you really become the expert in that specialty. So the experts are super experts, and that's I think that's the main difference. Now, how easy is it for someone, for example, to I guess to further their education if they were in Morocco to come to the US? Was that an easy thing? I'm sure that is very limited, and it's not just for everyone. But again, some people may ask, like, well, can I do that? How easy for me to do that? What will it take for me to be there if I was a doctor, for example, in Morocco right now?
yes.
If I were a doctor.
Obviously, as a Moroccan going to the United States for my education, it was not my comfort zone, because as we all know, our comfort zone in Morocco is Europe, especially France,
Yeah.
Belgium. Yes, we don't have to take any other exams. Like, we practice directly. The license we get in Morocco with the education is for us enough to practice in most of the countries, European countries. But here for my education, actually, they ask for, first of all, I didn't know how the system works. This idea of classes, credits, paying for each class. So for me, it was am I going to pay to educate myself? I thought I just have to pay the rent and the ticket to New York, and that's it, and my living expenses. But no, because it depends on the school, as I said, also the ranking of the school in the state, in the city, in the whole country. And also, I think my fellowship helped me a lot, because I understood how the system was working. And then when it comes also, of course, in I said they also ask for your grades. So I had to translate all my transcript, like from high school, from middle school, then high school, then during 7 years in medical school, then my 2 years, including my 2 years of internship, then my 4 years of residency, then send them to them, plus what they call here the personal statement, like the motivation why you are doing this, plus your resume, my work experience, my background, everything. Then after that, I was called for an interview. So I came to Mount Sinai for the interview. Then after that, they say, like, even because we don't have this concept in Morocco, like, for example, in Morocco, if you pay money, like, that you're gonna be selected, It doesn't work like this in the United States. You pay money and, like, you do your best, and you hope that you will be selected. We don't take it for granted. Like, it's not like if you have money, you will get a degree or a diploma. You have to work for it. You have to earn it.
Listen, I didn't think it would be easy, and that's why I asked the question, because some people are like, well, how is that possible? I mean, it sounds like, because when you hear it, it's like, okay, I was there, I'm here, and that sounds good, but it takes a lot, and it's not as simple as people may think, and it really takes a lot of courage. It takes investment, takes time, and you have to build a case, basically.
Yeah, and also, sorry, people, when we talk about grades, we know in Morocco we have like over 20. Or here in the United States, like
GPA.
all universities, they know how to translate this system to ABC. So whatever you submit, they know 19 over 20 or 10 over 20. They will translate everything to the ABC system. So yeah, we just have to translate and send them the transcript. They will take care of them.
Well, listen, I mean, first of all, congrats, because I mean, the program you're in is one of the best, and I mean, Mount Sinai is no picnic, and I'm sure it was not an easy, just hey, you get an interview. They really know who they were talking to, and so I mean, I have to say, I'm proud of you and your achievements. And I'm sure, anybody listen, whether they're Moroccans or Americans, I mean, that is actually a great, achievement. And something to recognize and a true success. So one more item that I think will be a good question that people would probably want to know about is the comparison in terms of infrastructure, over there versus here, in terms of practical stuff like lab access and technology access. Ultimately, here it's a lot more, well, at least the perception is that it should be more accessible and more available and more advanced. Is that even a myth or is that a reality? I don't know. But some people would probably ask, like, well, how does that even compare?
When it comes to research, obviously, United States is the best. It's even better than going to France, to Europe, because here there is also, and I will highlight it, the private sector is investing in the United States more than the government. Like still in Morocco or in France, people wait for the government to invest in research, and this is what made the United States like get the vaccine earlier. And in Europe, for example, in France, l'Institut Pasteur, who got like they asked Institut Pasteur to make the vaccine earlier, but because of the investment and people are from the private sector are not investing, they were not able to make the vaccine just like here in the United States. So when it comes to research, obviously the United States wins. But when it comes to hospitals infrastructure, obviously there is an excellent infrastructure in the United States, but there are some disparities when it comes to states, when it comes to what I learned here in the United States, the zip code, the access to health insurances, and these two elements, and also the ethnicity of the person, they have a very direct impact on the quality of the hospital they are going to, and also the physician they are seeing. Because here, as I said, there are many schools in the United States, many schools of medicine, and there is also this competitivity between the schools and the degrees and the diplomas. In Morocco, actually, we have some places like, as you know, like villages in the Atlas Mountains, and they have very limited access to technology. Now people are working like to get these people get at least the basics in everything, but when it comes to the expertise of the physicians, of the surgeons, like really I am very proud of my colleagues here in Morocco. They do great work, especially sometimes when they don't have enough, when we talk about infrastructure, when we talk about instruments of surgery, but they are able like to make extraordinary surgeries and to succeed. In the United States, yes, but as I said, I discovered a whole new world of how the ethnicity can change the access to healthcare. Yes,
Well, that's a big topic. I mean, there's even with the vaccine access, even with the, just the medicine itself, even the diseases or some sort of illnesses. Some demographics have different type of, issues, or,
yes.
They're prompt to have more or different types of, illnesses and things like that. The access to care, that's always been a very big question in healthcare in the US. And as a matter of fact, one of the shows I had about a few months back was about comparing like what would be the best healthcare system, and the expert was actually from Canada, so we're comparing Canada to the US. But then we also talked about the worldwide healthcare system and what would that look like to have an ideal access program where everybody has the best healthcare and access and affordable care, you know what I mean? And exactly. But and you're right. I mean the good news is that's what keeps us employed in the insurance world. So that's our job to hopefully help as many people get the care. But you're right. I mean, insurance does come at a cost. It's not cheap. Whether it's on the employer, the individual, there are of course government programs. I mean, that's my specialty, and those are accessible, but it's not for everyone, because you have to have limited resources to be even to access those. So to your point, if you have money, it's one thing. If you don't have money, you're pretty much done. But if you're in the middle class, sometimes it's a little tougher. In the US specifically. But again, same, I would say the same thing about Morocco, because you said it. I mean, some of the remote, areas, I mean, there's very little, hospital systems and clinical care and things like that. Transportation may be difficult, in technology may be lacking, and the basic means, can be a little bit difficult to that. And then, of course, also the cost. I mean, over there, you can go to government hospitals and things, but it's not the same as if you went to a private, for example. So it's also a system where you have money, you can get the best care. If you don't have money, you're lucky. But to your, a great point that you mentioned, that luckily that the doctors themselves, they do care and they give back into the communities. And so they do serve, a higher purpose, if you want to do it as, as part of their mission. I think that's really what makes a difference in terms of how people get access. But again, a lot of people will argue right now, if they listen to this and they're from Morocco, they'll be like, well, that's not what we think. I mean, not everybody has access.
Yes. And there's something in the United States, it's sometimes always either black or white. If healthcare is right or privilege, it's sometimes very political, the discussion in the United States. Some people would say, like, more liberal people, like, it's a right. More conservative people would say it's a privilege, we have to pay for it. This is also, but this is a very American discussion.
Well, it is, and again, compared to Europe, for example, or even Canada next door, which is more of a accessible, care for everyone. But even that is a question, because while it is accessible, it's not really as people think, because you have to wait in line and have appointments that are in the future before you can access immediate access. Now, you could have immediate access, but you have to pay for it. So it falls back to the same category where you have money, you have access, you don't. It's a little harder. And again, that this is not going to be resolved anytime soon, because I think one of the suggestions that was in that show was that maybe if the private sector gets in, and there's it's not just government, it's also private. Which, by the way, the concept that I work in, which is what we call managed care, is really the concept where, as if it develops to beyond just the government programs, it could be the right formula. But that's a big if and when, and so we're not even going to touch that subject today. But again, in comparison between a third world country technically and the most advanced, one of the most advanced countries, there's obviously big differences. But you've seen both, and in both of them there's pluses and minuses in how you look at it from any angle, and people can argue one way or the other, right? And go ahead.
There is also this issue of the price of medicine. Let's say in Morocco, for example, the equivalent, I don't want to say a commercial name, so maybe clavulanic acid amoxicillin, this association, will cost in Morocco $20. And in the United States, it depends on the insurance you have. So the prices are different. What I learned also during this program is that, for example, the investor or the company is American, the pharmaceutical company is American, and they have a patent, let's say, for 20 years. So, and they made an investment for maybe 15 or 20 years before. So they have to pay at least back their first investment, and they make money of it. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to invest again in
research and development. Yeah.
Yes, in research. So.
No, well, you're right. I mean, again, I can give some explanation about that. I mean, so from the insurance perspective, when we design benefits, I mean, ultimately there's some cost that's involved, and how much it costs, for each, drug and category. And we have also, like, in the insurance world, we have like tiers of medicine. So you have generic, preferred generic, brand, preferred brand, and you have specialty medicine, and that can cost tremendous money. Maybe the generics are very cheap. You can actually buy them from even stores like Walmart and Target in the US for $4, for your generics. But you're right, those generics actually, it took 20 years before they became generic, and before they actually got released from the brand, so it's a little, it takes time. And obviously, to your point, research and development is the biggest investment when it comes to pharmaceutical companies. So there's a big cost. And actually, that's a perfect segue to our discussion today, the second part of our discussion about your field of expertise now beyond dermatology and in the US. I wanted to share some fact to the audiences, because they might have heard a couple of things on the show here in Morocco and in the US. So doctor, you are actually right now in Morocco on vacation, but you typically are in New York. So just wanted to clarify that. So when we refer to it on the show as here in the US, because I mean, obviously she is in the US, but currently right now, just from the show, she's actually calling from Morocco while she's visiting, friends and family and taking a little breather. So just wanted to clarify that. So the segue to our, your current I guess field of study, which is research and development, and specifically in the vaccine development. And really that's the hot topic right now. And you and I before the show, we talked about, all the stuff that's going on in this world between pro and anti-vaccine and all these things that's going on. And also about the expedited rate at which, the pharmaceutical companies were able to develop these vaccines. And so the first question is, well, first of all, that is an excellent, field of expertise that you add into your, I guess, ammo and arsenal, right? I mean, that's a whole different world. Now, do you intend to really remove yourself from dermatology once you finalize this education here, or you want to just kind of mix them up? I mean, just a quick question I throw in there.
My next step for me in my career would be to focus more on research and developing drugs and vaccines. Then maybe later, maybe just before my retirement or maybe after, I will go back to dermatology. But now actually I'm more focused on my next step would be just research and development of vaccines and drugs.
Well, doctor, you're going to be a hot commodity right now because I just heard on the news that they've launched, I guess, a campaign in Morocco to start, potentially developing the vaccines in there. So you're gonna be one of the first ones they're gonna snatch out here. Come back here, we need you, right? Or maybe the opposite. Here, they're just not gonna release you. It's like, no, we want you here, and that's it. So you're gonna be really like you pulled back from both sides. Like, hey, we want her. No, we want her. We spend money on her. We spend money on her too. So that's gonna be a challenge, right? But again, hopefully you'll end up in the right place, and maybe you will contribute to help both societies and both countries and the world for that matter. So, and we'll thank you for that. I mean, I think we need a lot of that, and we need also a lot of clarity on what's going on because there's different questions about vaccines, and obviously COVID has really thrown a little monkey wrench, as we call it here, in the healthcare, and compared to all the other diseases and all the other vaccines. The big question is like, how did we not do this for HIV? How did we not do it for Ebola and for all the others? Yet this is like a closer to the common flu and closer to the H1N1, same family of SARS, yet we were able to do this in record time. And so the question becomes like, it takes away some of the credibility, I guess, of the vaccine. And then you have a lot of the anti-vaxxers, or you have also the folks that may be borderline theorists, and they just say there's a conspiracy here, but you have a lot of opinions. I mean, and I'm not here sharing, I'm not pro or against anyone. Everybody's entitled to their opinion, but the idea is like we have a lot of opinions, right? And right now the world is almost divided. You have these folks that are like, oh, I got my jab, and the other one's like, I don't want my jab.
Yeah.
You can keep your jab because I don't know what mRNA is, and that's like micro things, it's a synthetic, and again, I mean, everybody knows these terminology now. I mean, we don't even have to. I mean, every channel, every social media outlet is talking about this. It's crazy. You go to TikTok, you go to Instagram, it's all the same topic, but you are in the middle of it, in the back end of it, like on the front line and the back line of it, because you're really behind the curtains working on this. How, and you were there before this transition, so you probably were closer to the action, because I'm sure you're getting the updates in your field, and I'm sure you guys as doctors and researchers on the back learning these things, and also like getting closer look at how the progress with Pfizer, Moderna, and all these. As a matter of fact, tomorrow I have a show that is just about the recalls in some of those cases, like with some like Moderna and things like that. So we're gonna talk about the vaccine as well tomorrow. But so it's a perfect two shows back to back. We're talking medicine and research as well as vaccine. So your study now is research and development. Yes. And now you're researching vaccines specifically, but you were not involved in the development of this particular vaccine or any of those vaccines that are dedicated to COVID, were you? Yes? No?
In my lab, we were not working on this vaccine, but during our classes or lectures, obviously, it was like a hot topic in all classes, and we had lectures, in everything, like from the math of it, the statistics of the clinical trials to the clinical side of it. Yes.
Well, so the question is, I mean, that's the big question that everybody's been asking. You know, how much of clinical trials and you know, how long has it been? Because it was really developed in 6 months or so. So was there enough, you know, to really launch it? I mean, obviously, even the discussion is that it was approved under emergency use, not actually as a regular FDA approved drug or vaccine rather. So that's a big challenge. Now, in your, I guess, background there, when you were in those discussions, was that ever a discussion topic and a debate about it? I mean, was there such a thing? And also, if we can extend on that discussion in terms of what is the main difference between all these vaccines? And so what, I'll give you a little time to rehearse on those both both questions here.
So first, actually, it wasn't surprised that it was very quickly developed because we had a huge pandemic. The pandemic, we had lockdowns, no flights, no problem. Like for the HIV, we didn't have to go into lockdown because of the HIV. The governments didn't end the flights and the people and merchandise movement between countries and continents because of the HIV. But here we have a real crisis. The economy was collapsing. So the investment, like the investors, they paused on everything. Like I can even talk to you about how many research was started on many types of cancer, and everything was like paused just to focus on the coronavirus and the vaccine. This is the first thing. The second thing is that we knew something about the family. We knew many things about the family. We didn't know. We didn't have enough data on this particular, like how to say, like novel group or cousin, let's say, or son. But we had enough information about the virus, about the family. This is not new. The third thing is that in each step that was taken toward making the vaccine, ethics and was something that really were held like high and really respected. And it's important. Like when we talk about ethics, people think that ethics, it's only about maybe the side effects, but it's in every mathematical equation that a biostatistician had to resolve to find like the number of the sample size, for example, or to talk about the efficacy. Ethics was something that's really huge. And I don't think researchers and clinicians take time to explain to the populations. We cannot do anything without having in mind that we shouldn't harm people. We should not harm people. The vaccine or the drug has to have a positive impact on people. We have so many restrictions that even people don't know, so many regulations, and we just say, oh, it was quickly developed. No, it wasn't quickly developed, but if we put this amount of energy, of money, of expertise, of knowledge all over the world, teams were working like from the Japan to United States to Europe, to like everybody was involved in the development of a vaccine. And then when it comes to this question of people who are anti-vaccine or against or for the vaccine, I think we were lucky that the technology of the vaccine was discovered at some point, because if not, we would have lost so many kids for varicella, for rubella, for these diseases. When they were diagnosed in the beginning, for example, varicella, I'd say, these people, they have breathing problems and issues, like even more than the coronavirus does. Like, and because of the vaccine, it's not that the virus disappeared, but the presentation is becoming like milder. It's not very pronounced.
Mhm.
They don't have this, the symptoms are not very intense.
Right.
This is why the vaccine is for. It's not that the vaccine will eliminate the virus or the bacteria. No, it will make the immunity stronger to fight this agent, and also it will make the symptoms less and less intense. And then there is something that's very important whenever we are conducting trials for vaccine or drug. There is an ethics board that is made of researchers, clinicians that have no conflict of interest there, and also patients and family of patients, like who had COVID, or the people who took care of patients also. So, and from many countries. So I think nobody can cheat when everybody is looking at your work. It's like really impossible to cheat. And also, if we're not going to talk about it from an ethical standpoint of view, let's talk about the stock market and Wall Street. Imagine one of these pharma companies, like another person, because this is a highly competitive environment. So everyone is trying to find like the little error, the little mistake,
Mhm.
and someone will find something, and it, like, really the company will lose a lot of money. So even if we're not talking about ethics, it's not in the interest of the pharmaceutical company to do something wrong. And there are some restrictions, regulations, either by the FDA here in the United States or in Europe. They have their agency to control and to include so many people, because when you are doing something and nobody's looking, you are free, you can do whatever you want, you can mix everything. But if everyone is looking, and even patients, someone who took care of a patient, people who just are interested, ethicists, bioethicists, philosophers, like everyone was implicated. So I think for me, it wasn't very quick. Like when we see the investment and the problem that this pandemic caused, I think it's a reasonable thing. The
Well,
timing.
yeah, well, thank you for sharing all that. And again, you bring in great points. I mean, one is that you're right. I mean, the world stopped. The only thing that was in the discussion was, COVID and the vaccine and the cure and just find a solution. And you're right. I mean, all the greatest minds in the world have been working on it. I think what clouded this whole thing is the political space, because
Yes.
again, I mean, it was an election year. There was all that other stuff that was going on. We're not talking politics today, but I think there was some of that. And you're right. I mean, when you think about it, like if, let's say, if Pfizer or Moderna had any one item that was discovered that they did it wrong, I mean, again, I mean, I'm sure they're going to do everything by the book, but you're right. It would be like catastrophic for that particular company or the industry as a whole, and the trust war, factor for the future. But then the questions are, you mentioned something about like there were the cancer treatments or research was put on hold. But so that's another thing. I mean, people say, well, cancer's been around for over 100 years and we haven't found a cure. Diabetes, and I've heard those arguments actually out there. People can say, well, like you mentioned, the diseases for children that actually were cured through vaccine and vaccination systems. But again, they took years of research and development to get there. And I think that's what people are comparing to, like not being in the industry. They look at just like, apples to apples, right? Although they're not really the same apples. I mean, they're different, breeds of apples, but you're right. I mean, they look at the concept of, well, these vaccines took 40 years, 30 years, 15 years to even get them there. Now, yes, it didn't eradicate the actual, viruses, but it can, to your point, the presentation is less and someone can get them, it's mild and it's over. And I think the whole world have developed some sort of level of immunity for it, right? But then the other argument would be like, what, Ebola is more lethal than any other virus out there. And if, and we've had pandemics, or not epidemics, I guess, not pandemics, they were not global, but we had them in Africa more recent years, right? And it was not as catastrophic, and it did not, spread through the whole world. So some people are arguing these items, right? They comparing those things to what happened here. And then, and I think those are like the biggest pieces right now in the discussion. And then you have the discussion of the type of vaccine that was developed, because the media has hyped on the idea that this is a new type of vaccine. See, it's one thing when you have worked on the same type of vaccine over years and people are like, oh, well, we've used it for other types of, diseases. This is just, another, I guess, evolution to it, right? We evolved to the next mutation of this virus. We had SARS, we had H1N1, MERS, whatever. Now we have this. It's very, like you said, cousin, child, same family, right? And so we have some knowledge about it. But then when someone says, well, this is a whole new technology, we are synthesizing this spike protein and it's different, and now you're talking a language that people, wait a minute, are we talking AI here? Are we talking, and then you have all the other discussions about plants and or implants and GPS, and we're not talking about that right now, but all this has really excited people, right? And that's what caused, I think, the big divide right now in the population. Some are totally for it, some like against it, and it's just still in the works. And you are closer to the action, so you have seen, like to your point, the committees, things like that. Most people may not even be privy to this information because you're there. You don't just put something, and I can relate to it from like our industry, right? People think, we just put policies out like that. There's a lot of work. I mean, we get audited, we have everything has to be like really to the top, or you get shut down quickly, right? So people may not realize, and every industry has those. And you're right. I mean, when you're talking about like Pfizer, for example, right? We see a lot of commercials of drugs that they produce, right? And it has a lot of description, like, all these warnings, right? Boom, 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 boom.
Mhm.
I think what happened, some of the reason of the skeptical, folks out there, and the skepticism is about, well, nobody's warning us about the adverse reaction on this. I mean, it's gonna, and then you have also the controversies, right? Well, we need the vaccine so we can, get off the mask and get our lives back. But then they got the vaccine, and then now you have people say, well, you still have to have masks. So that's the other part that fueled more of this discomfort, right? Because it's like, it's not consistent. Well, if we get the vaccine, we should be fine, right? But then the vaccine is not curing. The vaccine can still give it to somebody else. And now people say, well, that's just like what the flu vaccine does, right? I mean, I don't have to take it, and my immune system can do the job. So these are the questions that are probably on everybody's mind, and probably people are watching, they're like, well, yeah, I got the same question, why is that? And so those are the pieces, I think, that make it more difficult to accept it in some realm, in some world. And obviously some places it's become natural, people are just doing it and done. And we'll talk quickly about the concept. Even in Morocco, I know that's a country right now that's been, although people may not realize it, but they've been pretty much in the progress of vaccinating almost everybody. I mean, they've actually really touched, nicely on a lot of folks. I mean, and they've had access to the vaccine, early on. I think the AstraZeneca is the one that they use. Yeah. So, but just going back to the question of, not the question, the point of the mRNA, type of vaccine versus the regular traditional vaccine. In your expertise, if you want to just ease up people right now to explain to them that, what would be the main differentiator? I mean, obviously one has a live, virus type of discussion, and one is completely synthetic, and used differently. So, and most people say, well, that's going to take in your DNA and change your cell, from the inside, and we're going to have zombies, right?
Yes.
And then you have the other one that is just, well, this is just the other virus, and just gonna, shoot in a non-active virus, load in you, and then just start you. I mean, I'm really making it very easy in words, obviously, that these are not medical terms, but you will probably give us more on that. But that's really the main challenge right now. So if you can just explain those two differences, like, like the Moderna versus the Pfizer, right? Two different, I think they're two different, right? Moderna has Johnson & Johnson is the one, right? Johnson & Johnson is one dose, and the other ones are two doses. So those two doses are mRNA, based. The other one is viral based. And in your expertise, what is the main? How can you just break it in simple words to us and to the audience?
Actually, in simple words, I'm gonna keep it very simple.
Yes.
We have live vaccine. It triggers the immunity better than other kinds of vaccines that are made of small proteins or synthetic proteins from this agent, can be a bacteria or virus. So let's say they have higher efficacy. And for example, in some cases, I'm not here talking about corona because I don't want to get things mixed up in people's minds, but for other diseases, we don't give, for example, live vaccines for pregnant women. because they trigger the immunity in to a very, very high level. And the pregnant women, they have usually very low, the system not working like normal. So yes, live vaccines, they trigger the immune system, and they are more efficacious than any type of vaccines. When they say a new technology, it's not that new. Like, we knew this technology for a long time. The second thing I want to talk about here, and that you mentioned, sometimes when you talk about the media, and we have to take care and to what's the source we are listening to, what's the reference. When someone says something on we read, we are getting texts on our phones, on WhatsApp, from everybody. Everyone knows everything about the vaccine and stuff, and we don't even check the reference. And let's say, for example, for one of the studies made in very correct and thorough way to be published in, let's say, the New England Journal, or the NEJM, let's say, or JAMA and stuff, people, they invest money, and this like these journals, you need to pay money to get, for example, your article plus the quality of the article, and there is a review board that review the methodology from the statistics and everything to get published. So this is an information that's valuable. But when you get something for free, like you get it on WhatsApp and text, or on the social media, we have first of all to check the reference, who said it, who did the research. Is there any conflict of interest? Like, for all papers that have valuable information that we study, like all over the world, in medicine or in science, we always have to see conflict of interest. Who did the research? Is he working for pharma? Does he know someone in the FDA or something like this? We don't even pay attention to this, and then we claim that we have understood everything about the vaccine, or about when it comes to the mutation, and it will cause mutation, the RNA, l'ARN, and all this discussion. I would say that in normal human being, we get like thousands of mutations every day in our body, and our body is capable of correcting this whole mutations because of many factors. Our genetics, our healthy lifestyle. This is what we tell people: don't smoke, don't, like, always keep a very healthy lifestyle, exercise. So our body is always, the immune system is capable of checking and paying attention to mutation. So with or without the vaccine, we always have mutation in the body. But beyond a certain point, when there is a problem in our defense system, we can develop a cancer with or without the vaccine. The vaccine is not, it's not here. I'm not even talking about the vaccine. Like, regular body didn't get a vaccine and he has an issue in the defense system, let's say. Some molecules are not able to read correctly the DNA, so they will misread DNA, and they will go and will leave. For example, when we have an error, they will not read it and leave it, and it will get multiplied from cell to cell, and it will damage the replication system of the cell.
That's cancer.
Yeah, that's cancer. When actually you mentioned the question of cancer was here like way before the COVID. And first of all, cancer is a very general term. Every type of cancer is different. We made huge, I think, progress when it comes to understanding types of cancer. And now researchers, they are going on something that we call personalized medicine. For every cancer, they just try to make an ID for each person to try to find the right combination and the right targeted therapy. Now we are even doing clinical trials with one person, just to show people how far we've come when it comes to research on cancer. I think, and I will always say it, physicians, doctors, surgeons, researchers, they are not doing what they should do in explaining what's going on. So for example, people didn't know anything until they discovered, oh my God, there is a pandemic, we have to read about vaccine, and people, they were not aware that when we talk about cancer, like we made huge progress. Not even in cancer, we have other diseases like chronic diseases. When we do clinical trial, just one for one person, which is like what we call really personalized medicine.
Mhm.
This is something that in United States, in big centers, hospitals like Mount Sinai, they are doing, and they are succeeding in doing it, and many people are getting treatments because of this person. They get like a very specific protocol for each one of them, not part of a whole bunch of people um, or community. And there is also something, yes, I wrote here, when we have a virus or bacteria, in the beginning, what we call in French la virulence, like
Mhm.
the power or the strength of this agent is high, and then sometimes it gets weaker and weaker over time. This is another thing to think about. There is also this idea of wearing mask, removing mask. First of all, people, we feel that there is a difference between now and, let's say, the when the pandemic started. We didn't know anything. We had to wear masks, and then at some point it was very strict. You couldn't get into the public transportation, go in the street. I remember this week going to Apple Store without mask. Like many of the stores on the Fifth Avenue, it was optional. It wasn't
Yeah.
mandatory. So we cannot state like now we have to still wear masks. It
Mhm.
depends. Also, it depends on awareness of the people. Like, for example, here in Morocco, people are, I might say, they are more for the vaccine than the opposite. And people, we have some places where we have to wear masks, some places it's optional.
Yeah.
Like, you know,
But that's all over, yeah.
yeah.
So doctor, one element is you talked about the immune system, and it does recognize and it kind of works on its own. Some people argue that too, like, well, this viral, infection or this particular virus, it has a fatality rate that is very low, and for the most part, people get a mild case or no symptoms at all, and the immune system does that. So a lot of people are more like, well, I'm just gonna, get it and get it over with, build my own immune system, and let it be. That's one group. And then now you have also like these variations or the variants, right? We have the Delta, we have the Delta plus, but I think what people, you mentioned something very key, is that bodies, have mutations. Viruses over the years and centuries always mutate, and even the flu. I mean, and every season there's multiple flu, strains, and therefore there's different viruses, and they may not all respond to the same vaccine the same way. So I think that the argument can be won either way, and but you're right. I mean, it's just different dynamics, and I think that's the key element here, is that it's been a very quick year and a half, and a lot of things happen very expedited. Most than when you have time and
Yes.
there's no crisis, you can take your time. But when you have to work 24/7 on something, I mean, you can expedite things, right? What would take 3 years to do or 4 years could take a few months, if you have more people and more time put into it, right? And I think that's also a valid, discussion there, or a valid point. Another element is now we've, since the vaccine rollout, there were, multiple cases of adverse reactions, and including that. And then now, more recently, you hear also people who have died, or first of all, people who have gotten COVID, even though they were vaccinated and are
Mhm.
fully vaccinated. Then you have people who died regardless of the vaccine or not. And then you have people who actually died potentially after taking and again, I can't prove one way or the other. I'm just, stating what's being out there in the news. But people died, after getting the COVID as a result of such. Maybe that's just the interpretation. I mean, one thing that we have to be clear about is that people die for a lot of reasons, and not necessarily COVID or the other way. and so even during COVID, people died for other reasons than COVID, and even now, people may be vaccinated and die for with other complications due to their immune system or something else. But those are all discussions that we can have in different times. But really, I think that's the other part that fuels the debate, because people are still concerned. Well, if this is so good, why are people like having these reactions? Also, there was also a lot of this. You said earlier, in the beginning, we didn't know much about this, right? So there's a lot of, with trial and error, as they say, right? Then we started learning more, and things changed. One of the elements in the beginning, they said this is only something that affects the seniors. Then it became the frail, then everybody, then the kids. And then,
Yes.
then even, well, like if you're 18 or less, you know, you would not need to do vaccination. Now, you know, everybody is getting the vaccination. So again, it almost progressed so quick in all directions. And that's what's, you know, causing all this turmoil, right? So in your background, in your realm, in your expertise, and you're exposed to this on the back scene, like, you know, you're backstage, right? We're in the stage, in the front stage, you're in the backstage. How does that all play in your research right now, and how you taking all this in terms of because ultimately I'm sure you're taking all this right now information in your world and adjusting it and digesting it and kind of using it so you can have a better outcome when you going forward, because I think a lot of this stuff is going to help you guys understand how you can play with this, you know, the process of development, and how you can also roll out, and maybe the way it's presented may be different going forward based on the type of feedback we get in today.
Actually, the more people, the more we have a number of people using something, either a drug or vaccine, the more we discover other side effects. And the side effects, again, like in research, in clinical research, it's very general term. So we have to split it in other different definitions, because sometimes what's a side effect for a drug can be developed as the main effect for this drug in another disease, but we call it side effect. We call side effect something that's not really, it's not what we want from this vaccine or drug, but it doesn't mean that's something that can kill our patient. It's not something that's 100% will harm the patient. But when we state side effect as researchers, people in the population can take side effects, so it's bad. But I can tell you many side effects were something that, for example, one of the treatments I use as a dermatologist for hair loss molecule, it was a side effect to grow hair. This effect was discovered, it was an anti-high, it lowers blood pressure, and it was given as a pill. Then people discovered that these people had very important hair growth. And then it was stated that hair growth was a side effect. It doesn't mean that it will harm the patient, but it's just not related to the effect on the blood pressure. So we developed this, what was called side effect, even if it wasn't. And we made a drug, which like a solution spray that we use for hair. This is what you can find everywhere. Minoxidil, if you know, like the molecule, you can find it over the counter. But in the beginning, it was a treatment for high blood pressure. So side effect doesn't always mean that it will harm the people. The second, as I said, the more we have people using something, the more we discover side effect, because it's statistical rule. This is very mathematical rule. The more we include patient and we have the data, the more we can improve our prediction models that we do about either vaccine or drug. And as you know now, we are even going in statistics with this, what we call the Bayesian statistics, when we work on model prediction. We do prediction, and the prediction is modified according to the data that we get. If we have one patient, for example, we'll have a curve that's different from 2 patients and 3 patients. And the more the patients are using, the more we'll see side effects. It's been like this for every drug, for every vaccine, just that now people are exposed during a very short period of time to this, like the vaccine was developed. Now we are talking about side effects and everything. But if you remember, my mother told me that maybe in the 60s, they had some vaccines and they were told, don't eat meat or don't eat red meat with them, and look, you will have side effects. And hopefully this helped people or researchers improve the quality of the vaccine later. So now we take these vaccines, we took these vaccines when we were kids, and we were not asked to avoid taking for 48 hours this product or this other product. So this is something that, yes, we will see more side effects as people are getting more and more vaccinated.
Well, I mean, that's a great point. I mean, you know,
but
when you look,
sorry, but people really have to be sure that, let's say, for fatal, like heart attacks, like for neurological side effects, for this vaccine got tested for everything. And sometimes, let's say, I will give an example. At some point, we can have surgery during our life. We will have general anesthesia. Some people never wake up after the general anesthesia because they have some genetic predisposition to have like heart attack or specific side effects of respiratory problem due to specific drug that most of the population
Will not
don't.
happen.
Yes, but we do not know. We cannot know. Like, for example, only for penicillin and some few products that we get tested before getting the drug. But for most of the anesthetic drugs or medications, you don't get tested for it. And we see patients, they went to do like some aesthetic surgery and stuff, liposuction, and then they never wake up.
Wow.
I don't wish this for people, but people should know that we are not equal when it comes to our genetic predisposition to developing side effects. For example, some people, the example I always give, will smoke for 40 years and they will not get lung cancer. And some people will just smoke for few years and they are predisposed to get lung cancer.
Or not even smoke.
Or not even smoke, absolutely, which is another type of lung cancer. And then when we talk about mental health, we have like bipolar disorder, schizophrenia. Some people, for example, schizophrenia, they will use cannabis for a very long time. They will never switch and go to schizophrenia. Some people will just use cannabis for a few times and just go. So we have this genetic predisposition that unpredictable.
Well, thank you for the clarity, because I think those are clear points that people have to take in consideration when they make these judgments. And I mean, I think we all have our own kind of predisposed judgments on things, and we try to analyze things the way we understand them. But when you put it into like a scale of things, you're right. I mean, in any universe, right, you're going to have the majority is going to have no problem. And again, that's the same thing. We say 99%, pretty much recovery, right? That 1% is a lot, but when we put it in a very light, it's only 1%, but 1% is thousands and if not millions.
And we need people who are very perplexed about the vaccine. We need their questions. We need them to challenge always the scientific community. We need their questions, because we cannot say, oh, everybody should think that vaccines are always good. No, we need people to be part of this safety and ethics committees, to follow and to monitor the research team who are doing research. So I'm actually trying to give answers and discussing with you and with the audience, but obviously we all need to have this, what if it doesn't, what if it has this or that? We always need this kind of discussions.
Well, and you're right. I mean, the more people throw in questions, the more we can test things, right? Because none of us smarter than all of us, right? I mean, we have the more we are, the smarter we are. I mean, more brains together, and unity there's strength. So even with this, I think that makes sense in terms of logic. So the more people involved, obviously more opinions, but also the more questions, the more like stabs and poking at something, you'll probably get more, closer to a better one. But you're right. I mean, you can have a universe of 100 people, they all test good, and you get the 101, and that's the one that actually has a problem. And when you select the universe, when you test it, you're not really, you do your due diligence to pick the right crowd based on criteria. But at the end of the day, you could be missing one person, and you only discover it, later on, because that's when you see the problem and you realize what happened. There's the other concept. I mean, you mentioned about the side effects. Maybe people will argue the side effects versus adverse reaction. They could be one and the same, but like for example, metformin, which is a drug for diabetes now, is actually being used now in cosmetic and anti-aging. So I mean, there's that's the good side. Obviously, when that happens, people are comfortable, right? But when the adverse reaction is blood clots, paralysis, that, and something, God forbid, to that extent, obviously people get more cranky about it, and rightfully so. I mean, it's not, especially when someone loses their family. And on the flip side, people will argue, well, I lost my friends to this. to COVID, and you know what, we need the vaccine, and you will never win that argument, at least not now. I think in time, eventually this will be under, water under the bridge. And unfortunately, we're not going to solve it today. Now we have only a couple minutes left. And, I mean, this was pretty interesting and pretty good. And thank you for like really giving us some of the insights. Like I had a show before with someone from Pfizer. This actually gives us a little bit more on the research and development phasing and how it works. I mean, maybe we can do a second sequel to this one, and we'll talk more, additional, maybe some questions that people may have. We'll talk about that.
I have just one thing, just to close this specific topic.
Yeah.
Maybe the discussion will never end, because we have some molecules like in dermatology, like isotretinoin for acne and suicidal thoughts. This is really like, when we think we close the discussion, it opens again, and then people are arguing. And I'm talking about even talking in conferences with dermatologists, and they are still not convinced. Some people are convinced. We have for other problems, for fertility, and so sometimes the discussions, they are opened, and they will never be able to close. So, and it's okay. This is part of
part of the research and development, right? Part of life.
Yes.
Well, listen, doctor, it's been real. Thank you. I mean, it's you just shared a whole different angle, for folks to at least to open up to. I mean, people still have their own questions, and they may take it, may not take it, but at least you shared it from a different end. People always question, and there's always going to be someone that's going to like, whatever, she's in it, she's in it with them. Obviously that's not the case, but certainly, on behalf of the audience, on behalf of the channel and the radio, myself, I want to thank you for actually being with us and sharing with us the valuable insights here. And hopefully, people can learn some new things today. And that being said, Hurricane H here. Thank you for watching the iHealth channel. Listen on iHealth Radio. Doctor, it's been real. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much. It was my pleasure. Thank you, Hisham. And I'm always proud of the work you do. And I think you answered most of the question. I didn't have to.
Well, no.
You knew everything about the whole topic.
No. I mean, you were the guide. I was just, kind of sharing some of the feedback that's been on the community. So I can just to give us a little bit of a, I guess,
Thank you so much,
context.
Ethan.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.